Is, are 2 meals enough? This can be called intermittent fasting, but some diets and doctors suggest to eat in intervals. So you don't end up eating too much at single meal. Is this wrong or right according to Ayurveda?
Uh, well, 2 meals, intermittent fasting, there will be a lot of overlap between them. And some people feel that we come up with new terms for old wisdom. So intermittent fasting is essentially a new term that we have coined for ancient wisdom, which didn't call it intermittent fasting but talked of two basic meals in a day. In fact, what I may point out at this point is that there are also some very reputed nutritionists now talking in terms of taking something to eat every 2 hours. That is quite in contrast with intermittent fasting. And taking something every 2 hours also has a rationale, because the small frequent meals are generally lead to less of overeating, because we get satisfied very easily. We are taking small frequent meals, and some of them are very healthy and low calorie meals, like say fruit. So but intermittent fasting is not in the same spirit. Intermittent fasting is more in the terms of the longer gap, and the gap generally again, there are many types of intermittent fasting, but one of the most popular is the one in which you have a long interval of 14 to 16 hours at night, during which nothing is eaten, which means an early dinner is what will achieve it. So if one has eaten at say by 6 in the evening, around sunset, then if the person doesn't take breakfast till 8 the next morning, it gives a 14-hour gap, and that should be all right. One way in which perhaps this helps is that we are not eating when the digestive fire is likely to be very weak. Secondly, we are giving every day a chance to those mechanisms in the body which come into play, which maintain blood sugar between meals. Between meals, there's no steady supply of the nutrients, particularly glucose, to the body, and yet we are able to maintain normal blood glucose levels within normal limits. And that is because we have mechanisms for those. Now, if any mechanism is used regularly at a higher level, it becomes better, it improves. On the other hand, if we don't use a mechanism, it gets weaker. So intermittent fasting will at least achieve one thing, because of this long gap of 16 hours or so. It will give those mechanisms a chance to work and keep them in good shape.
And having fruits for breakfast, proper lunch, and early light dinner, will this qualify for 2 meals a day pattern?
Well, one doesn't have to sort of be very particular about exactly 2 meals. 2 major meals, 1 or 2 light meals will do. And the important thing is which is the heaviest of these, and which is how much is the interval between the dinner and the breakfast. So these 2 things are more important than the exact number of meals. One of the things which dividing it into 4 meals can help also in one way is that then you will not feel the necessity of making any one meal too heavy. Lunch should be the heaviest, but that doesn't mean that it should be too heavy, because that again imposes a heavy glucose load on the system. And to impose that much of a load again may not be the best thing to do, particularly when the person is borderline. Say the glucose tolerance is borderline. If you keep giving relatively smaller installments of glucose, and they are released slowly into the blood by taking the right type of diet, high fiber diet and so on. So that will not tax the system. The person may be able to cope with it. Whereas if the person takes a very heavy meal, and that to the type in which there is a lot of glucose released and which is released fast, this will push the person into the diabetic category. So the person remains the same, his ability to cope with glucose is the same, but in one case his diabetes does not manifest. The other type of meal and the heaviness of the meal and the type of meal he's taking can push him in to the category of a diabetic.